And the House is preparing to vote on this week's D.C. budget deal later today. It's expected to pass in that chamber. Next week, it'll be the Senate's turn to vote. Some Republicans are pushing back on the new deal. Let's talk to someone, find out where he is on this. Join us now, Senator David Purdue, Republican of Georgia. Where are you? You're going to vote for this, I think, aren't you, Senator?
I am, yep.
And what are your what's your rationale, and how does it how is it distinct from what some other Republicans see as a non-starter?
Well, look, I'm a dead hawk as much as anybody here in the Senate, but I can tell you that this bill reduces discretionary spending as a percentage of the GDP. It's $54 billion over 2 years, which is about 2% per year increase. The irony here, Joe, is that while some people will say, oh, I don't want any spending increases, they don't say anything about mandatory spending, which is going up $420 billion over the next 2 years. That's where the battle is to get this debt under control.
Okay, so in that respect, and I guess you like the certainty it provides for the military as well. That's a priority for you?
Well, it does. I mean, we have three alternatives. One is to take this deal. Second is a sequestration, which would reduce military spending dramatically. We saw what that did a decade ago. And the third is another continuing resolution over the next year. And we know what that's doing now. That adds hundreds of billions of dollars to the military expense over a decade. So here's the reality. A no vote on this spending bill actually increases government spending over the next decade. It's an irony, but it's the truth.
Let's see, that isn't. Do you think, where is the USMCA right now, do you think, speaking of actually passing things? Did yesterday's developments move that down the field, do you think? Will that be a focus for Democrats, or will it still not be brought up because the election's too close?
Joe, this should be a non-starter. We should have already voted for that. The USMCA gives the Democrats everything they've asked for over the last decade, and it's a great deal. It adds 176,000 new jobs, $68 billion to the GDP. It puts much stronger labor controls and wage controls in Mexico. Mexico's already ratified it. Canada's in the process right now. I believe if we put that bill on the floor, it would pass both the Senate and the House today, Joe.
Well, like I said, do you think that yesterday's developments, do you think that is partially put to rest now with the Democrats, and they're going to?
I think it is. I hope so. Yeah, the Democrats I'm talking to say it was important. I think it will. I think if we put it on the floor, like I said, I think the thing would pass.
Yeah. What's the next step? Who do you need to do that?
Well, I think Speaker Pelosi has to make the decision in
the
House.
They say she was a winner yesterday. Did you see the crazy analysis of what? Yeah. Because she's been pushing back on impeachment, and now it's done.
No, but why hasn't she brought it to the floor? I mean, I don't.
Take your pick for reasons why. I mean,
Senator, why do you think it is?
Trump
well, look, I think Speaker Pelosi has the same problem that Boehner had when he was Speaker, and that is she's trying to control a very diverse group of members, and I think that's a problem. And she's trying to corral that right now and make sure she continues to have unity. It was a problem that Speaker Boehner had, and it may be one reason why he left. But this is one that's so important. This is much better than NAFTA. Everybody says it's a good deal. And right now, it does a lot of the things that the Democrats have been asking for over the last decade. So I, for one, am calling them to say, hey, let's go ahead and vote on this.
Just with China, with Huawei, everything that's happening, what do you know now about, or what are your feelings on what we did with Huawei, and whether the market was strong recently, because we're going to get back in the arena with China again, I guess?
I don't know, Joe. I've been looking at buying Italian bonds, so what do I know? But
yeah, good idea. It might be better to go visit there than actually buy any of their bonds, I think, and help the economy that way.
You got to take a lot of cash because they don't take credit cards anymore. But I'm really concerned about Huawei. I really am. And I think the concession that we made on non-military related issues is okay. But the big issue is still they're violating our sanctions with Iran. They still do business with Iran and North Korea. That's unacceptable. And we know that they penetrated the U.S. economy, and we're worried about what they're doing with our military. So Huawei is still an outstanding issue. I know that Trade Representative Lighthizer Ambassador Lighthizer goes to China, I think, next week, again, to continue this conversation. But what we have right now is we have the ball moving forward. It's just that it took a big step back when they withdrew some of the agreements back in May. I'm still hopeful that Lighthizer and Mnuchin can continue to move that forward. I believe it's very simple, Joe. What we're asking them to do is stop stealing our technology, stop forcing the transfer of technology, comply with the WTO, stop the cyber warfare, and give us equal access. So I think equal access is a great way to start in here to show some progress and make some sub-agreements. And I don't know whether the administration is agreeing to do that, but I think that's one way you can deal with the Chinese mentality.
Senator, I wanted to ask you about a different issue. You're the former CEO of Reebok. You've been in retail.
Dollar General.
You know this world very, very well. Steve Mnuchin was on our air yesterday and said that Amazon was responsible in large part for the decimation, effectively, of the retail industry, and he encouraged the Department of Justice to look into them. What do you think?
Well, the automobile killed the buggy whip makers, too, didn't it? Look, this is globalization, it's innovation, and what they've done at Amazon over the last couple of decades has changed the landscape here. It was the Walmart impact back in the 70s and 80s that everybody complained about, but they lowered cost of goods here in the United States, increased consumerism, and actually increased the standard of living. So what they've done is they've used technology and innovation to change the entire retail landscape. If you were to ask Walmart CEOs today who their number one competitor, they'd say Amazon. Now, a decade ago, they would have said Costco and Target. So, look, this is just innovation and moving the thing forward. Now, we had some tax issues at the state level and the federal level we had to deal with regard to online consumption, but I think those are beginning to be ironed out. But this is a new form of retailing, and we've got to adjust to it.
So do you object to the efforts by the administration to investigate whether Amazon is a monopoly?
Well, we want fair play, and obviously I think there might be a monopoly issue in here, but, you know, you could have said the same thing about Walmart a few years ago when I was competing with them at Dollar General. I certainly made that claim a few times, but, you know, that's something that's reasonable to investigate. I just think you're going to see other forms of this coming out right now. Now, they're trying to build out and go vertical in their distribution. We'll see if that's successful, but this is a new form of retailing that's not going to go away.
And where do you stand on the worlds of Google, Facebook, Apple? By the way, in many respects, they have marketplaces and all sorts of other things that in the retail world as well. And clearly, the administration has put a target on their backs. By the way, this comes as you talk about the U.S. being more competitive globally and what it means for some of our biggest companies relative to some of the really big companies in China, for example.
This is one of the problems with federal government oversight of an economy, a free enterprise system. This is innovative. These are innovative companies. They've grown very large. They're competing in the rest of the world. But let's remember, we don't have the right to do cloud computing in China. They have the right to do cloud computing here. So we still need to debate that. But with regard to antitrust and the size of these companies, this is a new era for oversight and regulation. What we want to make sure is that we have a level playing field for equal competitiveness among players so that we have innovation with small companies who are trying to get into this space and not pushed out by these large mammoth companies.
I mean, that really was, people throw around the term Luddite. I mean, they didn't like the machinery for textiles.
Sure, I mean, exactly.
I mean, that's very similar to Mnuchin. I mean, he's living in what year is he living in?
Are you objecting to what the administration's doing?
I'm objecting to saying that about Amazon. Also, I push back at him about how much Bitcoin you got, Senator.
Yeah.
You think that's going to, he said that's going to be gone in 5 or 10 years. There won't be any such thing. I'm not sure I'm with him on that either.
Well, I'm not sure we know what that's going to look like in 5 years or in 5 minutes. This is a very rapidly changing area. The rest of the world may be getting ahead of us on that. What Facebook found the other day, though, was that Facebook had not prepared the ground for this sort of proposal with Libra. And I think it's going to take a lot of time. Look, I think we're about in the area where we were in 08 and 09, where some of the derivative traders in New York got ahead of the regulators here in Washington. I'm not a regulation freak, but this is one where we had some controls that needed to be put in place for this outrageous leverage that we had in the financial markets. This is a similar situation where Washington is trying to catch up.